Hey everyone. So in today's video, very simply, we're going to run through about 20 to 23 or 24 names that are actionable, stocks that you need to be watching, especially coming into next week. So we're going to keep them in alphabetical order, and usually someone will be kind enough to do some timestamps for us. And this allows you to look at these during the trading day or just to keep reviewing them whenever. And just be able to click a simple button and just go to that chart and the notes that we go over. So let's just review and go over what we have, and then we can kind of figure out the game plan on what to do with these 20 names. So very first one I want to go over is just AMC. And the reason I want to address this today is you're starting to see cracks in these meme names, and whether people want to hear that or not, I mean, that's what you're starting to see. So let's just start reviewing what you're seeing here. So very simply, you are breaking down. So you've broken this 21 day and you did it the other day, right? You haven't broken this since this run. This is the first time it's happened. And today when that transpired, you kind of got hit a little bit, right? You broke that 51.44 level and you went right through it. Now, what's nice is that you did bounce back over that level and close right above your 51.44. So this is kind of a pivotal bar and a pivotal time because you can see how you're rolling here. See how this is shaped, and then this one is shaped lower. So you can see how we're breaking down. But even on that breaking down, if you just kind of take a look at this, right? Even when you broke down here, you bounced right back over it. So that's a very good sign coming into next week. What I would be looking for if I wanted to be long this is, see this hammer bar right here? You need to flip that hammer bar. I'm not even going to be that concerned, frankly, with the 21 day. I am if we don't get through it, but I would still use over the 21 day or over the hammer as a trigger. And then we can see what happens with we can kind of see what happens with the 21 day, because at least then we're in it before it gets to 55. You don't want to be in that position where you're playing catch up. If you don't see that, and if this gets weak, you're going to want to be out. If you break this low, you're going to want to be out because you're going to come and test this 40 level. And if that doesn't hold, now we're in the 36s. And it can happen. These moves, when they break fast. And this is not, as much as people think this is not like trading GME. This is not a short squeeze. There is enormous amounts of stock out there to short right now. GME had nothing like that. GameStop had nothing available to short. So that created the squeeze. This is just frankly demand and people holding their stock and not selling, which there's nothing wrong with. But that's what the driving force is. You can just see also, just to kind of hammer this home, how you've been respecting this wedge line. So, just be aware this is what's going on with it. Now, sometimes these undercuts do lead to a rally through, but your first bar, and it's very pivotal this week, on the week coming up, the short week, you need to get above that hammer fast. If you don't get above the hammer and you just start trading around, that's not where you want to be. You want to see it. You want to see people almost panic to buy it. So that's what we're looking for there. AMD actually got added to our newsletter today. And if you don't get the newsletter, there is a way to get it for free. The updates are free every week. On Wednesdays, they come out. And it encompasses basically what we do in the community. But
market data
it's
connection
worth
loss.
following along. Let me turn off the little British guy. There we go. And what I would say about
Market
AMD and what I really liked was I kept waiting for it to break and break. I just kept waiting. And I didn't rush it, because what always happens is you rush this and then you get one of these and then they fail. Well, that's not what's happening this time. And I want to be very clear that, this time is different. And I'm going to explain why. See this volume? See how you're curling up? See how this volume is almost like going to point straight up? Well, we're in a light volume week, and I have a volume line curling up. What does that tell you? It tells you that you're seeing real buying coming in here. Now, if you overlay this and just look at this chart, okay, this is your monthly. Okay, this is your monthly chart. So just to be clear, if we're looking at this, okay, we are over the monthly resistance line and into these wicks. Now, I didn't want to wait to the wicks, but the first wick is $99. I didn't want to wait and give up 5%. I don't need to, right? I can use what's forming here as a guide. And this guide would take me to 91.70, but look at it on the weekly. Okay, this is a weekly move. And you can see how we have above average volume on the weekly move and how we're right here, right? And now you can drill this back down into a daily and then play it out that way. And yeah, you have a lot more noise. Let me just clear this all out for a moment. Yeah, you have all noise, but just look at the stock in and of itself, right? And then when you overlay these pieces back into it, it tells you a story, and you can see what's going on here. So I would argue that this has really massive potential, much larger than I think than most people think it does. And there is a huge chip shortage out there that people are aware of. There's people that are clamoring to get as many of these chips as they can right now. You're already aware of that squeeze with Nvda, but it's falling over into all chip makers, and AMD is dominant. Their chips are more in demand than Intel's right now. So keep that in mind. And it's weird saying that. Been trading those names forever, so it's very odd to say that, but it's true. I mean, even Intel has come out and admitted it. So I think this has massive potential. The next real level to watch is 99.67 and go from there. But I think there's a lot of room on that one. So Amazon, I just wanted to go over. I don't know how I would feel the day that I retire, that the stock goes up. But Bezos' last day as CEO was today, and the stock went up on the news. So I'm not really sure the reason or rationale for that, but here we are. So if you take this and you move up to this level, you're sitting right at this 35.60. Until you get through there at this point, there's nothing to do. Now, is this the impetus that finally gets us through on Amazon? Let me put this up here for people that watch from their mobiles. So is this the impetus that finally gets us through on Amazon? That I don't have an answer to. I can tell you this, that I do like how tight this is getting, and we overlay our indicators. I would have liked to have seen more volume. This wedge line broke out. We really don't need that. So we can zoom in on this a little bit and just focus. You've been basing since July. Okay, you've been doing nothing since July except basing. When this breaks, you have a year base. I'll say it again, you have a year base on Amazon. So this big correction that everybody was waiting for when the pandemic ended and people were going back to their stores, it was going to impact Amazon's earnings. The stock's roughly $50 away from its all-time high. So expect this to continue. We just need to see the break. But if this breaks, if it breaks that level, you need to be looking at this. Not until, I don't care about everyone's all excited because it went up 1.5% today. That's not what I'm looking for from this. You break this level after basing and your channel's here, you're looking at a 20, 30% move. That's really what I'm looking for to try to get out of it. So APPS, what I like about this one today was I thought we were going to bounce, and we found one level where we were right, but I really like the name. I don't really like this action. So let's get rid of all these segment lines. Let's get rid of everything. And here was your issue today. You just had this massive selling that was inexplicable. And then when you were trying to find a reason behind the volume, and if someone has a better reason, please comment on APPS as to why. Because I was looking and found option expiration or unusual option activity, but I didn't see any huge open interest out there that would formulate what's going on out there. I just didn't see it. So perhaps I missed it. Perhaps, some of my scanners didn't pick it up. I find that hard to believe, but if someone has a reason for this, I'd like to know it. At the time of this, nothing has hit the tape that would convince me that this deserved to happen, but nonetheless, it happened. So we have to pay attention to it. Now, you can just see how orderly this was. Look at this. Look how orderly. Just straight down. I mean, it's not even a question. It's just straight down till you have capitulation, and then you try to bounce, but look, you can't even get over the red breakdown bar. So why would you, I would not be a buyer of this right now, right? I mean, there were a couple of trades today where I tried to get in and out of it. One I was up in, and then went back down to a break even. The other one, I got out with a very small loss. But why would you stay in this? I mean, if you look at this, this is really nasty stuff. I have this H that's failing at the top of it, right? And if I break here, this wedge, then the first level is here, 66. And then after you break this 66, you take this count, and it kind of gives you an idea on where you might wind up. And that alone puts you at 61, 62. So, which would put you, it puts you right about here, right? Which is not unrealistic. And there's just something wrong here, and I'm not really sure what it is. So I would tell everyone to be very careful with this one until we find out what's going on, or we could be seeing something like this. And you don't really want to be a party to those. I know people think that when they dip, you buy, and sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't. But in 4 days, this lost 43%. Right now we're not there. We're only at, it's a bad day. Don't get me wrong. 16, 19% roughly. Well, they're saying 14, but I think it's, they're saying 13. Let's move that up a little bit then. Okay, there we go. And let me just come down here. But from taking from the top to the bottom. But I really think you got to be very careful here. I would not be rushing into this thing to buy it, to be the first one in. I don't always need to be first, right? I just want to be right. So to me, I don't have anything that's alluding to that. You want to get excited because we rested on the 50 day? Go for it. But to me, when you're seeing that and you're basically hanging by, your fingernails, it's not really where I want to be. I don't want to be hoping for the long weekend. I'd rather see proof. Now, the long red spike would convince me that somebody won it out, and that's what did this. And we'll see early next week if it's over or not. But let's try and get some proof first. This Asan is just it's just on fire, and ASAN. It's so interesting to watch, but it's just been an absolute monster move, and it just keeps on going. Even today's setup here, look, there's your 8 day, right? And you can see as you just kind of, every time you get close to that, it just goes, and it did again today. So, let's see what happens with it, but that's a pretty powerful move out of that little channel you have there, right? So that might continue. You may have follow through next week, but you're going to have to watch that. And you're going to have to figure out how you're going to get in that. I would get in it using 15-minute or hourly charts and using stops that way. If you drill into it, let's do it this way first so you can just see how insane this is. That's not going to work, but we'll do a weekly. So if you could just kind of take a look since its inception, we'll get rid of this. I mean, you rallied, came back down, you broke that 43.72 high, and you never looked back. I mean, never. You never even had a down week. So that's pretty impressive stuff. Now, if you go here and take a look at the daily, what are you going to do with this? I mean, that's really the question, right? What do we do? I think with something like this, what you need to do is you need to sit here and try to figure out how you're going to get in it if you want to be in it, right? To me, I'm not knocking if you want to be in it. I'm simply saying that you've had a huge move, right? And we can argue that that's a point right there. And now we're flipping. You can see you're here and now you're here, right? And then you hit this one, come back down. Tried it a couple times, failed to get through that level, and we got through it today. Usually if you flip these, you can go parabolic and keep going up. That might be what happens here. So, but I would get in it with 15-minute bar charts. That's the only way that I think you can get in it. I want to point this one out. We're not going to spend an inordinate amount of time on it, but I was asked a lot about this one today. And I just want to go through this. So, because it is important. So you see this bar right here, and you see how you have this whole wick up here? Where does that line up with? Right? It lines up with inside this wedge. So in other words, this was my down bar. This was my gap high right there. And that's roughly where you stopped. And you tried to do it once before, right? Right after you tried to do it once before that level. You can see how that level actually even fits over here. It's funny how that works out, right? So see how it was even an issue here, and then you rejected it and then flipped it. So then when you broke it here, support flips to resistance, and that's what happened here. So what I'm getting at is when you see something like this, you really need to watch it, and you need to be very cautious, because it's nothing for this to do this and just work its way down, as it takes everybody's money. So you're going to need to see it power through the 1690 before I would even consider looking at it. And that even then, you're looking at it from a trade standpoint in my mind. So I didn't want to spend a lot of time with it, but it is important. I would look at the volume and say, yes, I get it. I see what you're saying. To me, you didn't even close halfway up the bar, right? The bar was at 17. Here you're at 13. I mean, you're basically halfway there. So be really, really careful there. Dash has been one that was been on our radar for a while, right? In and out of it. Sometimes it looks like it's going to go and then it doesn't. This little move was kind of interesting today. The issue with it is there was just no volume. And yes, we can make excuses because of the day, but we're just making excuses. AMD didn't have that problem, right? AMD didn't have a volume problem today. Dash did. So just, try not to make excuses for the positions. Trading's hard enough without you giving stocks a reason to, cause us pain. So you can see the breaks, and now we're trying again. Now, if you pop through this major resistance line, this is really kind of cool, because you should have a clear shot to that 221.40. Now look at this. See how you're on that shelf right there, and how the shelf goes away? This could move pretty fast. I mean, I hate to laugh, but you sit there and say, I sit there and say that you have to watch it. You do. And yes, we are respecting that 8. And that's why you're going to start seeing me use the 8 a little bit more. And this fits into that large cap space, actually, because they are the dominant leader in the space. But look at this. I mean, you have a shot to this. You just have to get through a clear break through this, and you have a shot there. So keep that one on your radar. I would not stop watching that. This is getting kind of tired. It's had a big move. I have 100 lines on this chart. So we're going to get rid of them all. And we're going to put this here. I should be making more progress with nothing but blue skies above me. And I'm not. And that would concern me a little bit. So let's see when we have earnings. Well, we already just had the earnings. And that's what made the stock move, right? In 2 weeks from that earnings date. Where did we go to? Geez. That was the low. We never looked back, right? So 36% in 3 weeks and 5 days. So it could be due for a rest. Now, this 8-day has never really been hitting and closing below that. Now we have 2 closes below the 8-day, which might make it susceptible down to the 21, so 264. I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if we're going to break this line or not. I would say that if I did break this line, I would not be surprised. And I would also say if we do break this line, I would not be surprised to see it go to 264 and test that line. If you just want to see where 264 just happens to also fit in, it just also happens to fit on this support level, which ties into the 21-day. So that's another reason why I'm giving that level. So let's see how that plays out. But it's not a buy here. But if you're in it, I would be in it to see if it can hold, and if it could hold this level. So that would be interesting to me if it could do that. Facebook. I just wanted to go through this really quickly. We had the nice breakout on the trial news, came back down, tested this, came back, and just sitting right there. All we're doing is flagging. We don't have to spend a lot of time on Facebook. All we're doing is flagging. We're trying to get to the upper channel again, get through 358.14, push to this, and you're going to 384. There's a 10% move there if you get through this. So just consider that, okay? Microsoft. Microsoft, I just want to point this out. This was one that we have in the newsletter, and I also have had, I should say, an option position in it that we closed out today. But let's just go through this so you can see this. So our break, our buy point was 265.50 on it, right? So what we've seen is we've just seen this channel. Okay, and I can get rid of, let's clear some of this up so that we can drill into this, because I really want people to start trying to understand the process so they can start thinking, how they can do this for themselves. That's kind of why I do this. So see how you're riding this 8-day all the way up, and then you get to this? We could still break here, right? But we did something that gave me pause on the 15-minute. I'm going to walk through it, and it's why I said to close the option position for those that follow the option position. We were up 100% in the options when we bought them. We paid 8 and change. They closed at 16, 17, 16, 3/4, something like that. But it did this right on this line, and it gave me pause. Now, they do it on purpose, and you can see the volume at the end of the day, which means that I may have closed too soon, but I'd rather lock in the profit. See how, let's get rid of these indicators. So see how you formed, you came up, then you formed, and you have a doji right here, and then you broke that doji. I didn't want to come back and retest 277, because if I did that, I felt that we could come down and test 275, and from where we're in and the profit on the option, it's not worth it, right? I don't want to start giving back 20%, 25% of my gain. I'd rather close the option and look for another position. Now, you'll notice that for those that follow along, I didn't close the stock position. I just closed the option position. The stock, to me, I think you're much better off continuing to hold it right now. But the option, when you have that much premium, you don't want to come in Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday or any day next week or the week after and be down 5-6 points and lose that. So after just looking at that little wick, I gave it a little bit, and then when it did that tick, that was enough for us to lock it in. So that was my thought process for those that were asking. The question is, what do you do now? Well, this is setting up to break. If it breaks this channel, it's going to keep going. If you break this channel, you could really have a very powerful move. And if you look at Apple, which we can do very quickly, I think you're going to have a powerful move. I really do. I mean, Apple broke through today. This is another one from the newsletter at 133. Let me just throw this down here because I didn't really want to spend time on it, but just while we're on the topic, see how you broke? And then you broke this level. And now here's your 138 over here. Bonk, bonk, bonk. And then boop, through. And I always say this, you keep banging on a door long enough, what happens? That door opens. So that door opened. Now we're above here. Now we're in no man's land on Apple. So, I mean, if you don't think large cap tech's going up, you have Microsoft and Apple kind of alluding to the fact that maybe large cap tech's going up. So here's your channel from August, right? What other channel was similar to this? Amazon. Okay. So you're starting to see, and I just want to put this out, and people that haven't been trading for a long period of time are not going to know this. When a bull market starts, and I'm not saying that we ever left one, but we obviously had a correction, right? Everybody felt the pain of that correction. It came in, and if you didn't know how to handle a drawdown, you got clocked. I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know, but it was a correction. It wasn't a bear market. It was a correction. I've been through a couple bear markets, and they make that look like a warm, fuzzy picnic. So I would just say that you need to look at where the money is going and why it's going where it's going, right? So where's the money going? The money is going into technology, and it's going into large cap tech, and it's going slowly into there. So if you think about 2020 and how 2020 ended, how did it end? How did that big end? It ended with SPAC names and companies that weren't making revenues, and we're going to buy this new Tesla because we just missed the other Tesla, and this one's going to go. All that speculation. That's how it ends, right? It ends in a bloody speculation bath. Just like, all those SPAC names that blew up when people realized what they truly owned. And now you're at that point where those types of companies, some of them are going to be investigated, and rightfully so. I mean, they just lied to people. But what you have to focus on is you have to focus on where we're going and where the money's going. And in the beginning of a move, the money, and this is the beginning of the move, the money always goes in the large cap first. And the reason is because if the move is wrong, they have liquidity to get out of the move. So that's where institutions put their money first. And you always want to follow where the insiders and institutions are putting their money more than where retail's putting their money, because they'll hold longer than retail. It's just a fact. But this is the XLK. Okay, we're ready to break out from here. If we get through this, we're ready to break out. Everything's pointing that we're going to break out. If that happens, you'll see an acceleration. This is the technology index in for the S&P, one of the sectors of it. And then Microsoft and Apple are 40% of that. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at this. That's the picture of how I see the world and what's going on right now. And that's why I'm so hyper-focused on large cap stocks right now, because it's the beginning of the move. The longer the move goes on, the more it'll start going into the other sectors. Like you'll see, I mean, everybody saw IWM today, and I know I'm going off on a tangent, but I think this is important for people to get, right? We all saw this today, right? I mean, I can get rid of this. Let's get rid of all of it. So we all saw this today. I mean, you have a bearish engulfing bar on the IWM at this place again, and everyone's telling you don't worry. Well, why wouldn't you worry? I mean, it's very clear. It's very clear that we've rejected again at this level. So I don't really understand when people, are saying, "Oh, well, don't worry, we're going to base." Well, what about that says we're going to base? All I see is a level that we're not even knocking on the door of anymore, with a huge reversal. What were we down today? 1.29%. Okay. What were the Qs today? Okay. They're showing up 58 basis points. I think it was up more. I think they came down at nighttime on that close. And then what was the S&P up? 48 basis points. So why would you be chasing small cap names? It just doesn't make sense. I mean, you can play around with them and trade them. I do it, but to think about that you should be investing in them and holding them for a long period of time when the underlying index that holds them is having a hard time rallying with the rest of the market, it just defies logic. And I said this on Twitter today, and there's a link to follow us on Twitter or follow me on Twitter in the description. But I just want to point this out. If you're struggling, one of the problems that you might be struggling into is the fact that you're in the wrong index or in the wrong sector. So if you're having an issue, start top down, right? Start top down. Start what's the best index? What's the best sector in the index? What's the best stock in that sector? Right? If you did that, 90% of your problems that you're running into will probably go away. Then you can just start talking about process. Now you have the right vehicle. Now you have to figure out how you're going to stay in that vehicle. So I hope that's helpful. MRIN, I just want to go through this. So let's get rid of all these levels and then we'll talk about them. I know a lot of people are watching this one, and I know a lot of people did very well with it this week, and congratulations to them. There's just nothing really to say here. I mean, if you think there's a reason why the stock went from $1 to 25, besides the fact that people decided that they were going to play it, there's really no other reason why this happened. Nobody came out and purchased the company. Nothing like that happened, right? Just a bunch of people got together and said, we're going to run this one. So understand that there's nothing wrong with it. Just understand what you own going forward so that you're not in utter shock when it stops, because it always stops. So the levels that I gave today that I thought were interesting were this for one, and I think it's very telling that this move's probably not over just yet. So there's your low, right? And this is really what you want to see. See how you're holding here? See, you tried to break it and couldn't? See, so support, this was resistance. Resistance has flipped to support. That's how I view that move. Why was this resistance? Because we came back down here because wicks are price rejection, right? See how it all ties in together? Here's another wick. We rejected that wick. So up here, just think about it from this perspective. Wicks are price rejection. On this buy bar, nobody wanted to buy up here. On this sell bar, i.e. the red bar, see this wick? Nobody wanted to sell there. What does that tell you? That tells you have a change. You might not like the change because you bought it up here or you bought it up here, but you have a change. So what you have to do now is you have to monitor that change and make sure that it lasts. If you break this low, okay, this would be 2/3 of an evening star. To complete the evening star pattern, it would take you to 1152. And for those that have been following along, I will link the morning star or the candlestick patterns at the end of this video, so you have something to watch to learn them. And I'd strongly recommend that you watch them because they're all over the charts. They are literally all over the charts that we go over, and they're all over the charts that you're looking at all day long. And when you can identify the pattern, you can benefit from that. So I think it's worth it. So what do you do now? Well, you have to make sure you hold this 1891 level. If you don't, this is very feasible. And I will give you an example of that. This was one on Twitter that I called out and one that we talked about in our community, but this was really simple. We ran up and then you have this bar here. This is called a gravestone bar. And the reason that it's called a gravestone, it is a form of a doji. It's called a gravestone doji to be super technical. But the reason it's called that is you're opening and closing at the absolute low, right? So you opened at 35.49, your low was 35.25, and you closed at 35.40. So I mean, you're basically everything's at the low, right? And they call it a gravestone because that pretty much the move's dead. Is the best way to explain it. What you're going to see here is the completion of that pattern, right? So that's what I'm getting at here. See how we completed that pattern? This is Smith & Wesson, SWBI. And that pattern broke. And the fact that you went through this pattern and through that bar lets you know that you have way more downside to go on Smith & Wesson. I know we're not covering Smith & Wesson, but when you have the channel here, it should hold that line. Worst case, it went through both of them. So you probably have more pain there while we're there. And what I'm saying is, doesn't that look somewhat similar to the pattern we just showed? So if this happens, that similar pattern could develop. So Nvda, let me put this up here, pull this back. Nvda to me just looks like we're getting ready to go again. And I know people are going to be like, we just went, and I understand that, but let's get rid of all these lines here for a moment. We're going to just start over with all of them. So for those that are following along from the newsletter, we got in this at 699. We raised the stop to 747. I'm going to wind up raising the stop again. I mean, it needs to be raised at this point. The first target was 825. Look, we're pretty much there. So I feel like I'm going to raise the target. I just am not entirely sure yet. I do want to just show what I see so that you can understand it. You see how these bars are getting super tight? Like these ranges are getting super tight. The stock's going up in value, and what's happening? The bars are getting smaller. Well, that usually means some kind of change is coming or some kind of large move is coming. That when you get this tight, like take this for example, you have a 10-point range this day, okay, on an $800 stock, right? I mean, look at it. Here's another one, 20-point range. Here's another one, 9-point range today. 14-point range. Like, it's not normal. Okay, so it should have way more volatility than that from where it is. So that change and contraction of volatility, even though we're still going up, raises my interest. Now, you have a minor channel right here. From this point to this, you see how you had this evening star right here, and it bounced off of that pattern, right? That's what I'm talking about. You see how that pattern didn't break, but SWBI's did? So just to kind of give you another example of it. Anyway, so you should be getting to the top of this. So that would take me to 848, 850 by the end of next week. So I really like that thought. I really like the thought process of it getting back up to here and testing that. And you have to understand, we just talked about this, and it's one of the things I'm trying to hammer home. Okay, Philadelphia Semiconductor Index. We're trying to break out here. We broke out, now we're sitting on these levels, but we're still higher than we were a week ago, right? So we broke out, now we're settling down here on a very light volume day. But if the index looks great, the Qs, if the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index sector looks great, and the Nasdaq is the strongest stock, if this continues, what stock's going to go up? Right? The AMDs, the Nvidias, they're the ones that are going to drive this. So that's why, I'm invested in them. So Oracle. So let's just throw this out there. Oracle's earnings. If you look at this, it is almost textbook. Almost every single time you trade Oracle, this is what it does. And I'll try to see if I could find them more of them. But this is really what it does. Even like, look back here. Okay, earnings, you break down, and then you rally. Earnings, right in here was the low, and then you rally. Earnings was the low point. I mean, I can get rid of these indicators so you can see it. Earnings was the low point. It sold off, and then we rallied. And then, it is constant. Usually it's this. Like if you go back 10 years and look at Oracle, usually there's a gap down, like almost every time. And then it will fill that gap and rally to new highs. And it constantly does it. So it's a very simple, easy pattern that replicates itself for whatever reason. It's like everyone says, oh, this is really it for Oracle, and they sell it and then it rallies. But, not to digress, but let's get through this. So look at this. Here, I got to draw that way better. So there. And you can actually argue that it cuts through this to here, right? Like that was the time it tried to pop out. So maybe that's even in earnings. No. So, but you filled the gap, right? And now what happens after you fill the gap? You make a new high. I see no reason. We could probably clone this line, and you should try to clone them. It's not really rocket science. That's why they even have a bar here on Trendspider that clone the segment so that you can, all channels should have the same trajectory, right? If they do, then you have a true channel, and then you can look at it, make a decision. So with that said, I really like this one. And I understand what they're looking at, and I feel that you can get up to this 88 level. I don't really need all the bells and whistles. You can just tell. You can just read price. So this was one I was asked about, and it's not one that I really trade around in a lot, but this is pretty interesting stuff, isn't it? Like today was the day, and I just want to say something. I get about 200 to 300 requests for stocks in these videos. So I only do probably 20, and it's getting longer again. It used to be 40 of them, but now I only try and do 20, 25. So if your stock's not in here, it doesn't mean that I'm not paying attention. It just means that I have so many requests. So if it's something that's important to you and then you ask the next day again, like this person did, then, and I can look at it again because I run through all those charts really quickly to pick, the top 10% or 8% of them. If I see something, then I just throw it in. But I want everything that's in these videos to be absolutely actionable. Right? I want everything to be actionable in these videos so that they're worth your time. They're worth everyone's time. Not just the person holding the position, but the person that might want to be getting into it and not know where to get into it, or the person that might be trying to get out of it and not understand where. So this is doing everything right today. And it definitely was worth putting in here for people to notice. That is a very clean breakout and very little chatter about it. Not a lot of people are talking. I have above average volume. I'm above my 200-day right now. Really, what you really want to see to confirm that this move is broken is this 404, 405 level, right? And you might not want to wait for that. You might want to be a buyer. And what you could do is you can get pretty specific now with some things and see if we're right. Yes, we're above the 5-day. What else could we use to determine this? Let's look at volume by price and see where point of control is. Okay. Great. So point of control is right here, right? That's the purple line. That shows where the majority of stock price is, the huge swath of stock, not the average price of all the stock that's in here, but the largest concentration of stock. And I find that a better read of movement than the volume by price VWAP. So see how you're right in here? And you can pull this back. Look at it all, right? You can see it. They slide it back over. What we want to do is flip it and go, and you're going to have a tough time. But when you do flip that, that's what you want to see. So today we got above the point of control, the trend line, and the 200-day moving average all on above average volume, and nobody's talking about it. So let's go and look at this even a little closer, and let's look at some other things on it. This is PAYC, by the way, and I'll put the symbol in a moment. So let's get rid of the volume because we're aware of that volume. Let's get rid of volume by price, and let's just look at an RSI. So, okay, so not only do I have all that going for me, I have an RSI that is higher than this peak. So what does that give me? You see this movement here? Let's get rid of all this stuff so we can drill into this. See this downward slope? See this upward slope? Okay, that's a positive divergence. Okay, so I'm above the wedge line. I'm above the 200-day. I'm above point of control. I did it on above average, and my RSI is up. All right, so you see where I'm going with this? See how we put it all together so you find something? And like then all of a sudden you find one that might work. What was the relative volume of the day? Oh, it was 2.5 to 3 times normal daily average volume. Okay, there's another reason. So when you see things like that, it makes it easier to put that whole plan together. And I'll throw this up in here, and I would strongly suggest you put this in your watch list. So, but you can see how you could break out here and get right to that 4 or 5 level now. So here you are with Peloton. I have too much on. I have too much on here. I get asked too many questions about it. I got lines everywhere. Hold on. Let's get rid of all of them. All right. And let's get rid of the 5 because, well, we could just leave it for now. I mean, it is helping us. The 5's pointing down. The 8's pointing down. They're about to cross. When they cross, it's telling you that this move's probably over, right? And if you use this cross here or here, here it didn't really work. Here it did work. Right? I mean, it's not a tell-all, but it does kind of give you a symbol of what to look for. It usually works more on rallies like this, right? And then crosses marking a time period, which this one did, than it does just when you're in the middle. So I'd be very careful here. And if you break this 200-day, you're going to just fall apart. So you got to make sure that you don't break that 200-day. If you get below the 200-day, everybody that just bought this on the 200-day breakout is going to get out of it. So keep that in mind. And right now you're looking at 118.71. And that's the key level that I would look for there. Rig, you know, I don't like the smaller guys, but at one time this wasn't a smaller guy, and we're going to get into that. So this was Rig. Okay, this was actually, I believe this is actually the company that they made that movie about with Mark Wahlberg. So I think it was. I think this was it. I think that this is that company. Someone can tell me that in the comments. But see how you're breaking down here, right? And this is on a monthly chart. I mean, it just looks like we're going to 0, right? Let's go through the weekly. This is your weekly chart. You're breaking out here. You're breaking out of your weekly chart. You have yet to actually really have a major breakout after this, right? And now you have it. So realistically, we're going to here. Let me move that up so it's done right. And you're going to here. You're going to 7.25, 729. I mean, that's where we're heading. So let's see how this goes. But that's, to me, is where we're heading. And I think we're going to break out there and continue to move. I really do. I think that we have a lot of potential here. So Snap, I know people love the name. I do as well. Let me just throw this in here for the people that are on their mobile. And what you're going to see here, there we go. So you see the wedge break here. Let's pull this down and let's open this way up and scroll way into this so that we can understand what's happening here. So here's your flagpole. Here's your flag. And then you had your wedge break inside the flag. And you keep hitting the 669.35 level, don't we? And we're just not breaking it, but we're not sure why. I do think that we could break it, but you do have a lot of noise in here, right? And we could see how much noise is in here, and maybe that's going to be telling. Maybe that's going to tell us something. Let's get rid of all these moving average. We know that we're above all the moving averages. That's not really adding any value whatsoever. Let's Let's throw this in. So I really don't have a reason here on the volume side, volume by price, as to why we stopped. You see, we're basically in a vacuum. It really should be breaking the 69.35 and going higher. Is there an earnings coming out? Not until August. So I don't really see a reason for this to be doing what it's doing. The RSI's lined up right. So, let's just take a look at relative volume and see if that's telling us anything. Yeah, it's just not, people just are not paying attention to it. They're just not interested in it. So until that changes, you might not break. But this is a flag, and this is a high, tight flag. I mean, you are up here forming that flag. So I think it can go. And let's just see if that happens. I don't think there's anything really to do there except if you're in it to wait. If you're not in it, you need it to break out before doing that, and then use that breakout bar as your guide. Support.com, this was a small one, and I just wanted to do this really quick because I saw something in it that I think people need to know if they're in it. SPRT. Oh, I don't know what that is. SPRT. Okay. So as always, if you find this helpful, please subscribe to the channel and click notifications. What we go over here is extremely timely, so you want to make sure that you follow along. And we do a live show every morning at 8:45. So here we go. See this? See how you're holding right here? Now look. Okay. Everyone's excited because you're breaking out through this. You have resistance right here at this 5 level, right? You'd have to get through all this to get into this. And then if you get into this at the 6, you have all this just sitting up there waiting for you. So just be aware of that. Like, I don't know what type of move you're looking for, but who's in this. But if you're looking for like this big monster move where you're going to jump up like this, that is going to be the exact opposite of what's going to happen. Because see how orderly these bars are? They're told to sold. Whoever's selling, when they're selling at these levels, is selling a certain amount. That's why they're almost so even. And then as it got lower, they tried to sell as much as they could, right? All these levels are 1 day, 2 days. That's telling you have a massive seller on any spike on this. So this has to be an institution or insider, right? No one's going to be sitting with that much stock by themselves. It's got to be some institution that has a filing that probably filed for it and, has been in it from here and then was fortunate enough to get this and just blew it all out. So just keep that in mind. So UPST, look, I keep waiting for it to break, and we're just going to show you this level. Here's your point of control level. Here's your wedge, and we're just sitting there, and we need to break it. Now, they are walking us up, and maybe it happens, but you need to wait for that to happen. Until then, you really can't play this. I can throw in the, right? But I mean, it's not telling you anything that you don't know, right? I'm not really adding anything to it. I mean, you should know by looking at it. If you count 21 days and you're down from where you were 21 days ago, pretty much what the average is going to tell you. And you can see how we hit there, and it is what it is. But you're sitting on point of control, and you really need to hold that, or we're going to have some issues. UPWK, this was a name I looked at a long time ago, and it's just been a monster. And we're just going to leave this here. So I broke out. I have a flag, but I have a rising channel that I'm starting to break. I'd be really careful here. You're pretty overextended, and you're at the top of a rising channel. And I don't know if you see this or not. So sometimes I'd recommend just looking at your charts without having anything else on them. Let's just clone it. Let's clone it and see where it fits, because I don't think it's going to fit perfectly. Yeah, it doesn't. Yep. So it's not a perfect fit at all, but you can see every time we're trying to get out of here, we're having issues with it. So I would argue that this is setting up to retest this 55 and then possibly come back down here to 52. So I'd be really careful chasing this. And now you can overlay your 50 and your 21. We don't need the 200, but we could put the 8 in there and see if that's helpful. So the 8 is telling you, and the 5's flat, right? I mean, you should be able to tell that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars. So you should be able to, I'll throw it in, but you can kind of tell that that's going flat, right? I mean, how else could it not? If If it's a 5-day moving average and they're going flat, then the average is going to go flat. So, but by looking at this, you see how you're bouncing off of that. You tried to break it. You couldn't. You didn't break it again. You couldn't. You need to hold that line. Closing below that 8 days probably sending you to the 21. So just be aware of that. This is not something that I would chase. VACQ. I did this for one very specific reason for the people that are in this. And I'll put this up here. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it. We're just going to get right into it. You need to be really, really careful here. You sold off directly into one of the larger shelves, which just means that you have selling all up in here. This is your volume by price VWAP. You rejected it and you closed at the low of probably the low 20% of the bar. It's not where you want to be at all. So be careful and do not get into this. You're probably waiting for some kind of SPAC news. That's fine. I hope it works. All I'm saying is that I'd be really concerned that that's the best I could muster at the end of today. That's it. So just be aware. ZIM, I want to go over, and I'm glad that people asked me about it. You know, it's a name that I really like, and I really like the fundamentals of the company. I think they're going to be around for a very long time, frankly. But, you know, trading is trading and investing is investing. So if it's not making us money, what's the point? This point of control is broken. Okay, we closed below it. We have not really closed below it. We kind of closed below it the other day. We really closed below it today. Now we're just dangling on that 50-day. You can see it. And I'd be really concerned here if I was long. To me, we've never really touched that 50-day since it's been an inception. And today we did. So that leads me to believe now, and you can see the pattern here. Here's your H, right? There's your long part of the H, then 1, 2, 3, and then we formed the H and broke and then followed through. We didn't form a green hammer. We have a red hammer that's sitting on the 50-day. So maybe it holds here, maybe it doesn't. So the flip is going to be getting above point of control, right? And you have all this other stuff up here. But if you break the 50-day, if you break this 39.30, which, you know, this is where that secondary was done, just FYI, 39.80. That's where that secondary was done. If you break that level, that is the low of when the secondary was done. So if you break that level, there's going to be more pain there. So that's it, everyone. Have a great weekend. If you need anything, please reach out. If you have a question about one of the stocks, please comment on it so that I can answer the question. I answer everybody. And if you could do me a favor and like the video, I'm trying to get in front of as many people as humanly possible to show them what it takes to be truly successful at trading. Thank you.